the year Martin Luther King Jr. died, the year of 9/11, the year that COVID hit. Seismic events draw focus on the forces in our nation and world that are in tension. With big destabilization comes a new landscape, and we are more open to the outside, the ordinary work of God. It is a year when things fall apart, when the ground falls out, when what is familiar feels distant. It was so for Isaiah. The year King Uzziah died, and the years no doubt leading up to it. Grief, uncertainty, fear for his nation's future. Charles L. Aaron writes, "One can note the common themes between Isaiah's situation and ours. If Uzziah's death created political uncertainty, we too are awash in political uncertainty. The politicians in the United States seem unable to work together. If Isaiah thought he lived among a people of unclean lips, we live with cyberbullying, hate speech, name-calling, microaggressions, profane chanting, and a promulgation of conspiracy theories. Since much of the language happens online," he writes, "we might call ourselves people of unclean lips and fingers." Yes, as we've mentioned in the past weeks in a forthright way, we may be preoccupied in this time and in this year. We come today into worship, and we imagine Isaiah preoccupied as he visits the temple, maybe seeking to fast from the latest news cycle that is filled with signs of injustice and infighting all around him. Just when Isaiah has given himself over to the additional space of the spiritual practice, when he has stepped away from the word on the street, when he has limited his media feed, this is when the vision comes. A close encounter of the divine kind. Now, you just heard it as Ken read it before you. This is where we could get lost swimming in the imagery. The challenging reality of having a masculine-seeming human king God seated, which in my mind always looks a little like standing at the foot of Abraham Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial. Flying serpent-like seraphs with 6 wings covering themselves. Euphemistically, the feet might be their private parts. They're flapping, they're covering, they're winged. Flying as they might. They're cross-talking, they're holy, holy, holy. Is it a cacophony or is it a harmony that they sing? The doors, the hinges of the temple are rattling, and smoke fills the room. Nope, this isn't creepy at all. Friends, it is in times of uncertainty, Moses and the burning bush, Jonah and the big fish, Jesus and the tomb, we open ourselves to the extraordinary. The stories of those who have confronted their own fears, and just by showing up today with our phones tucked away, we invite an encounter with the Spirit. Beyond the particulars of what seems strange to us in this vision from another time, we see a blueprint for worship that might feel familiar in Isaiah's call story. Coming in the presence of God's house as we have today, invited into praise and worship. Come, open our hearts. Holy, holy, holy. Encounter the divine through song, confession for sin, that which separates us from God, and God's pardon that would be available to us with an invitation to continue or even enhance our work as we would go out into the world. And what does worship invite from us today? What does God invite from us when we come into this house of God? I invite us, friends, that just as Isaiah has done, that our spiritual encounter today would awaken our senses, that worship asks us to stop the things that block us from God and from each other, and to receive an affirmation that God is with us. Worship enables us to hear that God forgives where we fall short individually and communally. And in worship, we seek a blessing before we go back out. Today, we come to worship to learn from Isaiah. What did he do when he was faced with his unstable moment and all manner of fear as it overwhelmed him? There in the house of God, before the wonder of God, he starts by admitting his own deep feelings of inadequacy. My guess is that in the many months and years to come, we will continually encounter our own feelings of deep inadequacy in the face of our own life age and stage and what we feel that we can bring in this moment. Woe are we are lost. This might become a mantra. This is because the magnitude of what is assigned to us and because of the overcoming temptation for despair. This past Wednesday, I joined some of you, there were about 20 of us, right here in this very room in a circle for a depolarizing within workshop that Kathy O'Hanlon hosted as a Braver Angels facilitator. She's a member of the Many Paths, One God care group, and she so willingly offered up her services after a sabbatical from her work in this capacity. She felt that the urgency is now. And so she offered up this workshop that is designed for people to be able to own their own stuff. The things that we hold on within that contribute to a polarized atmosphere and keep us from being able to have conversations with our neighbors in the midst of our own bias, stereotyping, and contempt. And to begin this time, it was evident that we all needed what she offered, which was an opportunity to name our griefs, to name the fears that were most occupying our hearts, and then to partner up and to share those in our crosstalk. It's a vulnerable such place, talking politics. I have to say that especially as a pastor, when often the pastor is looked like to hold a neutral space or not get too political or not name the things that are holding me back. But in that tender space, I moved along with the group as they were posted on the wall, the things of sometimes, often, never, when it came to these certain questions about the things that we harbor. The last such question was this: how often do I feel a rush of pleasure with friends when we ridicule those crazies on the other political side? Often. Sometimes, never. This made me take deep pause because in some of the categories, I have to admit that I was in an often space, often comparing the best folks in my camp or the things that I believe in versus the wild and outlandish in my own ear things that I hear from somewhere else, the harming and dangerous things that I feel are threatening to others in this country. But with this question, how often do I feel a rush of pleasure with friends when we ridicule those crazies on the other political side? Friends, in my heart, it wasn't a rush of pleasure at all on this end. It wasn't a rush of pleasure. Whenever I find myself cycling and spinning, and I have so over these past weeks, churning about what other people, groups, or even leaders believe, I feel not a rush of pleasure, but a weight of sadness, a distance from my own true core beliefs about the sanctity of others. How then to decry the injustice or the vile or demeaning words I hear coming without repeating or amplifying hate with my response? Brene Brown names her own feelings of inadequacy in this time as she tries to speak out and allow her life's work to show up in the public sphere. She's always been working to be vulnerable and courageous and inviting us to do so too. This past couple of days into the week, she has offered up this. She names micro doses of hope to our nation's atmosphere as her only prescription. She writes, "The research shows that hope is a powerful antidote to despair. What's interesting, however, is that hope is not an emotion. Hope is a cognitive behavioral process. It's about having a goal, a pathway to achieve that goal, and a sense of agency, or that I can do this. Right now, the thing that is helping the most is microdosing hope, she writes. I have no access to big hope right now. However, I am asking myself how I can support the people around me, the people on my team, in my community. How can I make sure that in the maelstrom of my emotions, I stay committed to courage, kindness, and caring for others, regardless of the choices made by others? Doing the smallest, next right thing is hard AF, but sometimes it's all we've got. Holy, holy, holy. The whole earth and its ecosystems are filled with the glory of God, that each living being made in the divine image is worthy, that even if whatever powers at hand are hell-bent on destruction, that visions of justice and mercy cannot be stripped from the imaginations of those who humble themselves. It starts with a willingness to admit our own unclean lips and open ourselves to Isaiah's message that is persistent, microdosing hope, one every other chapter in that famous book. Friends, today we'll have the opportunity to sing and to pray and to get in touch with us on our own hearts, admitting the places of our own feelings of inadequacy and naming the things that we know that are getting in the way of our relationship with God and others. We'll hear the affirmation and confirmation from Margie today that God is here, ready to meet us, ready to bring whatever visions we are open to when we bring our full selves. And we have the opportunity for anointing oil. For when we were thinking about it, we thought how important it is to receive the touch of the Spirit. In this case, it comes from the coal. And we bring the healing balm that knows that mixing the coal and the healing balm will make us able to do hard things. Just before worship started, I crawled into the hearth and I got a little spoon out. And there's some ash in there, reminding us that in the places where the heart of our lives burn, that we open ourselves to God. And it is in that cast off, but the ash that comes, that receive on our foreheads, on our hands, that help us to face the hard things that we are healed to do. Let us move into this time of meditation, receiving this beautiful song as Margie offers it up, having some time of listening to her instrumental music, continuing to join ourselves together in song, and then approaching the anointing table.